Yo guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to take a look at the lost Seinfeld episode, Tales from the Internet. I love Seinfeld, I've seen it several times, but so it's pretty interesting and exciting to find a new episode. Let's check it out.
Did you ever hear about the lost Seinfeld episode? The one that was supposedly so offensive that it was cancelled during a table read.
No way.
Basically, Elaine buys a gun, yada yada yada. It upsets director Tom Sharon and Julia Louis-Dreyfus, yada yada yada. The cast revolts, yada yada yada. And the script gets tossed, forcing Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld to write an entirely new episode in just 48 hours. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a pretty big Seinfeld fan. I mean, along with The Simpsons, that was my preferred.
Yeah, actually, what it kind of reminded me of was like a Simpsons episode. It's like, oh, Marge buys a gun or whatever.
Background noise for most of my life. And I only ever just heard about this recently. So for today's video, let's take a look at the lost episode of Seinfeld.
Okay. Let's see then. The lost episode.
This video is sponsored by Trainwell. Trainwell, formerly Copilot, is an app that combines the personalization and the accountability of a real human expert with the flexibility of technology.
Like
with
AI
Trainwell, you're an AI. I already worked on workouts in my prefer using around my home. Trainwell, by the likes of it was a show for the first kill during the 90s. But it definitely didn't start off that way. In fact, it was a show for the first couple years that looked like it just wasn't gonna make it. The critics loved it, but the ratings left a lot to be desired. It spent its first couple seasons getting beaten by the likes of Urkel.
It was kind of clunky in the first season, but it was only like 6 episodes though. But they really got their footing really well placed in the second season.
Murphy Brown, Major Dad, and Head of the Class. Starring, of course, America's sweetheart, Dan Schneider.
Wait, Dan Schneider, the creator of iCarly and Victorious and Drake and Josh. And Zoe 101, I think. Amanda Show, maybe? I'm not sure. I only seen, when I grew up, I only saw iCarly and Victorious though. And then I watched Drake and Josh not so long ago. It's really good. But I haven't seen Zoe 101 or Amanda Show or whatever.
Did you feel that?
What? Something's moving.
Oh no, that's us. We're moving to Thursday at 9:30.
But when Seinfeld switched over to Thursday nights, the show would skyrocket up the Nielsen ratings.
Really?
Nowadays, a show like this wouldn't even be able to finish the first season. But Seinfeld kept trucking along to season 6, when it would become the #1 show in America.
Hell
the Seinfeld
yeah.
finale was so big that TV Land didn't even air counter-programming against it. They just left a screen that said, "We're watching the last episode of Seinfeld. We'll return at 10 p.m.
No way, dude. That's crazy.
Seinfeld felt special, a fresh take on the sitcom. Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld wanted to push the envelope of what you could do on a network sitcom. This was the exact kind of show that would hire a guy like Larry Charles.
But at that time, talking about dark things and admitting dark things about ourselves was not
Larry Charles definitely looks like a Jew, dude.
what sitcoms were about. They were about hugging. And
like Jerry was not likable.
he was not, nobody was likable really on the show, and yet that's what made them likable.
Larry Charles is the man who wrote this controversial script entitled The Bet or the Gun, depending on who you're asking. Larry Charles was and still is a firm believer that comedy should have no sacred cows. Boundaries should always be getting pushed. On
I feel the same way.
December 12th of 1990,
It's just comedy, dude, but people get so butthurt. It's kinda... And it's so... Well, everyone's voice is so vocal in this day and age, so it's kind of hard though to think about comedy in the same way I used to when I was younger, when I thought I could just joke about everything, because now it's like more, oh, you're gonna get cancelled and stuff like that. Like, people can't get the joke anymore, it seems like.
that belief would be tested. At the table read for The Bet, the Seinfeld cast would revolt against what they would call an offensive and unfunny script.
I do remember that show. It was written by Larry Charles.
Yeah, the bet is the only one we never shot.
So what happened that day
Never shot because it's about a gun.
and what happened to the script? Tom Sharon said, "The actors looked at me and said, 'We don't want to do this episode.' I said, 'I agree with you. Guns are not funny no matter what you say. The Bet
They are awesome, though.
was set to be the 4th episode of season 2. It would have been episode 9 of the 180 episode run of Seinfeld. In the script, Elaine wants to buy a gun for personal protection. So Kramer would bring her to meet a black market gun
Jeez,
salesman.
Taxi Driver?
This gun salesman meetup would be similar to a scene from the movie Taxi Driver.
Jeez.
According to Entertainment Weekly,
They did do something like that in one episode with when their shower pressure was off. So they went to this black market shower head guy. And that was also kind of like a Taxi Driver reference.
the script was inspired by season 3 writer/producer Elaine Pope, having just bought a gun herself.
I was
Okay.
concerned about Kramer being so open about
Michael Richard.
Arming Elaine.
Richards? Jeez.
although, why not?
Larry Charles, in an interview with Screen Crush, says that around that time there was a lot of talk of women buying guns. What if Elaine bought a gun? Elaine wouldn't be ashamed that she wants to buy a gun and would defend her position. If only Elaine could have defended her position.
Michael Richards' career got really beaten up, I think, by him saying the N-word. But PewDiePie also did it, and it went okay for him. So maybe it wasn't the N-word that caused the problems in his career, or at least I don't know if he has had problems, but he hasn't had any other big roles.
Position to Julia Louis-Dreyfus herself. Bobby Joe Lathan would
But you don't really need it either when you have starred on a show like Seinfeld, though.
say that during the script reading, Julia was vocally protesting the script.
But it seems to me that something had happened at that time in the news, and it was about somebody getting shot or what have you. And so that's why I was thinking they were gonna get rid of it, But I could be lying. I don't know. I could be making up my own little script here for all I know.
I remember thinking,
Okay.
we're not going to do this.
The rest of the cast was said to have sided with her objections. Now, Jerry Seinfeld himself might have been more willing to go along with the script. In a Reddit AMA, Jerry would later recall the script as not being
Seinfeld really wasn't Reddit? That's so weird, dude. That would be a funny episode, like Seinfeld discovering Reddit and just like, what is this?
very funny. But his memory had him being the one who purchased the gun. During this table read, it said that director Tom Sharon and the cast revolted on set.
Go to
Oh my god,
motionarray.com and
they
enter
got
a world with over 2
revolted
million
like
creative
the
assets to bring
gun.
your vision to life.
Isn't that
In my
a gun
opinion, guns
revolt?
aren't funny.
Tom would report back to NBC that they did not want to do this script. So what was it that set the cast
Revolver.
off?
Maybe
From
that's-
all reports, it was a
Jesus.
piece of dialogue in which Elaine would describe different types of political assassinations.
Jerry and Julia read this one scene where she has the gun and she's holding it in her hand and she says to Jerry in the car, "All right, Jerry, where do you want it? The Kennedy, the McKinley?"
Jesus. Damn. That's
she
crazy.
said it. I mean, she could barely get it out of her mouth.
I can just picture Elaine so perfectly doing that line. All the mannerisms are just so vivid to me that it's as if I had
In the
actually
Trump?
watched the episode.
And I remember saying it.
Jeez.
And just
Crazy that
looking at me,
Trump almost got
the most
croaked,
pathetic
dude.
eyes, and then looking at Jerry and looking at Harry. And everyone got up from the table and she went, went over to her and she went, "I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this." And I said, I don't think it's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Which I guess it might make sense with JFK crossing the line, as JFK Jr. would be a plot point in a later episode.
Right,
Although they
right.
would later parody
Yeah.
the assassination with Newman and Keith
But that was also a parody of the JFK movie, though, so it's kind of different.
Hernandez. Tom Sharon says, "As I recall, there was some reference to make a joke called a Kennedy that offended me. And I guess it offended the cast as well. Tom Sharon was a gunnery officer in the United States Navy. A gunnery officer is someone responsible for the maintenance of weapons and training people on how to use them. The show was barely hanging on as it was, and this might have just been too much too soon. Although Larry Charles still argues to this day that this episode might have flown in season 6.
Everybody felt that it would work, actually.
There may have been a shooting around the time of this table read that would have made the joke seem in extra bad taste. In a Vanity Fair
Okay.
interview, Larry Charles says that he had the full support of Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld, but the episode wasn't funny enough to justify the controversy. he didn't crack the code on how to make guns funny.
You bring out a gun, you gotta be exceptionally funny, and we just weren't making it.
Really? Or just play it off as being awesome? It's a feat of human engineering, dude. It's really cool. Before I was kinda not that interested in guns, but lately I've just found them more and more awesome and radical, gnarly. So cool that humans could make something so ingenious as a gun.
It was also a tad too grim.
It never seemed to quite be as funny as it should be, and because of that, the balance was off, and the darkness kind of enveloped it, and it could never really emerge from that darkness and become what it should have been.
But it also feels like this episode was judged a bit too harshly. That an episode like The Contest, which if you recall was the one where they had a contest to not masturbate. An episode like that might have been deemed too controversial to air had the jokes fallen flat at the table.
Really?
And this change was very...
I guess that was breaking new ground for sitcoms in the 90s, because people didn't talk about that stuff.
Very late in the process.
Now it's just common, like Miskiff brings up jerking off on his podcast and stuff.
To the point where sets had already been built. A fact that was confirmed in Larry Charles' interview with Vanity Fair. They even had their guest cast established. They had Ernie Sabella as the gun salesman Mo Corn. You might recognize Ernie Sabella as Leon Carosi from Saved by the Bell, or the voice of Pumbaa in The Lion King.
Pumbaa?
Seinfeld fans, of course, know him as the naked man on the subway. Bobby Joe Lathan was a flight attendant named Connie. Her character was an integral part of the B-plot of the episode. In the episode, Kramer slept with a stewardess on the plane ride back from Puerto Rico. But his story is so fantastical that Jerry and George debate whether or not it's true. Believe it or not, Jerry is the one who believes the story and George is the skeptic. And in the final version of the script, Jerry would be proven correct. And different drafts would have different ways that this is proven. The first draft of the script would actually have ramifications on the long-term history of these characters. For example, Kramer's name was originally going to be Conrad, named after Conrad Birdie from the film Bye Bye Birdie, which is something that Larry Charles is bummed isn't canon. Kramer also has a brother-in-law named...
I think Kramer is the perfect name, though.
David Zweig. So either he was going to be previously married or he was going to have a sister. The episode starts with Jerry talking about lesbians.
Oh, they actually have the script, dude.
Of lesbians. Oh, Mr. Lesbians. The script gets a bit self-referential, referencing Jerry's real-life stand-up routine. George telling him to stick to supermarket jokes. Socks, Pop-Tarts. Tells him he's no social...
Jeez, this movie?
Telling him to stick to supermarket jokes. Socks, Pop-Tarts.
Frosted Flakes movie? I liked it. I thought it was pretty funny.
Tells him he's no social critic. And then Elaine comes in and says, "Did I tell you I'm getting a gun?" There's a lot of muggings happening by her place, and Jerry responds that a gun wouldn't prevent that. Jerry Seinfeld is coming for your guns. Are you prepared to kill someone? I'm prepared to kill you. George agrees with Elaine's justification for getting a gun. And Jerry's preachiness in the episode is a bit off-putting for a show that is kind of all about not having moral lessons.
Random thing, but this guy's mustache is pretty nice.
We were very committed to making the show funny. That was very important. We also were not concerned with morality, what's good and what's bad. So there was an honesty to the show, an unspoken honesty that was unusual for comedy at that time.
And then Kramer shows up back from his Puerto Rican vacation and brags about banging a stewardess, full of air humping motions. You can also see the stewardess's name changed away from Julie in Larry Charles's handwriting on the first draft of the script.
Cool.
Kramer, of course, did the deed while on the plane. And there's a lot of fans that feel that this...
Jeez, Kramer is part of the Mile High Club? Jeez. Kramer based.
The script is a bit off-brand. That George, Jerry, and Kramer all come across a lot creepier than they normally do. But with this being so early in the series, you do have more room to experiment with their characterization. And for Kramer, his trajectory might have had him looking more like Quagmire. Oh yeah, also this didn't happen in the bathroom. The whole plane was empty, so they just boned in the aisle. And now the stewardess is named Connie, and she has red hair. And of course, this Kramer has banged a lot of women. He brags about a pimply girl and a greyhound. And then Elaine tells Kramer that she's looking for a gun. And of course, Kramer knows a guy. He'll take her to see his gun dealer friend Mo Corn. Mo is someone who lived in Jerry's old building. So Kramer and Elaine go off to buy a gun. Meanwhile, Jerry and George are still arguing about the hookup story. George is saying that Kramer's no Tom Cruise. No woman would risk her career for Kramer. Meanwhile, Jerry has all the faith in the world in Conrad, so they make a bet. And then Jerry joins Elaine and Kramer to meet Mo Korn. In some ways, Mo almost seems like a bit of a proto-Newman. He's described as greasy, slow, and low-key, man of few friends. He has a Newman-like reaction to seeing Jerry, and even calls for his mom. This woman's name is Diamond, and she's just as gross as her son. And she's from the same old building as Seinfeld's parents. So Mo pulls out his gun suitcase and says he only sells guns to friends.
What a movie Taxi Driver, huh?
And then, of course, immediately does the main thing you're not supposed to do with a gun. Points it right at Jerry's head.
Jeez.
And then the police arrive and Act 1 ends. Then in Act 2, it turns out it wasn't the police. It's two other lowlives named Chicky and Mints. Think of the gambling track Festivus guests.
Nice
the degenerates who spend a lot of time on 42nd Street. Which, of course, back then wasn't the home of Eminem's world. It was known for peep shows and such. And Kramer mentions that Jerry goes there all the time. I do not, and I'm not a big shot. In this version of the script, Elaine chickens out and doesn't actually buy a gun. Instead, she gets a toy gun. And she wants to make sure that Jerry isn't smug that he was right. I want him to gulp one hard saliva lump of death before I tell him the truth.
Jeez.
Which, alright, I'm kind of with the cast on that one. There's aspects of it where I could see Elaine saying that, but in general, it just feels a little too dark for her character. And this all leads to the big drama at the table read. Elaine and Jerry begin joking about being shot. The first draft script doesn't have the McKinley line that Jason Alexander mentioned. And the group goes to the airport to confront Connie. Did she sleep with Kramer? Elaine does the asking. Connie denies knowing Kramer. So George is like, I win, let's go. But Jerry is like, maybe you need a reminder. So then Elaine opens up her pocketbook, forgetting that she has a fake gun. Connie sees the gun and gets scared. Airport security stops them with guns drawn. George panics and says it's a toy. Which, you know, even if we didn't have confirmation that the script is in fact real, this moment is so perfectly Seinfeldian that how could you doubt it? Then in Act 3, they jump a little bit into the future. Kramer receives a letter from Connie, who's now an ex-stewardess after the gun scare. She's back to her first love, sales. And since it's such a crazy world, she bought a gun. If he was ever back in Flagstaff, she'd love to see him again. George lost the bet. That's a wrap. What a perfectly Seinfeld ending. But Bobby Joe recalls that in the final version of the script, the gang had actually called Kramer from a holding cell, only for Connie to answer the phone and pulls back and reveals that she's in bed with Kramer. Jerry Seinfeld must have enjoyed working with Bobby Joe because even when the episode was canceled, she got placed in a different episode, playing Patty in the 10th episode of the 3rd season, The Stranded.
A week later, they gave me a call and said, would I like to come and play a hooker? And I said, well, sure.
Yeah, she was a hooker.
I made a whole career out of that, you know.
So with this episode canceled, Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David would have to piece something together in just 48 hours. According to Bobby Joe, the two of them weren't that bothered by having to scramble for a new episode.
Crazy.
It wound up being The Phone Message, which was a repurposed SNL sketch that Larry David wrote.
Pretty good.
And they combined it with Jerry Seinfeld's real-life hatred of a specific Dockers commercial. This wound up being Seinfeld's lowest rated first-run episode ever, with a 13.6 rating in February of 1991. It almost killed the series. And put the show on a 2-month hiatus.
No way.
That's not going to be good for anybody.
But perhaps surprisingly, despite his involvement in creating this disaster, nothing happened to Larry Charles. Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld had his back. They believed in his ideas and his scripts. Season 2 was when Larry Charles was brought in as an executive story editor and eventual writer. He had what he called a cushy position up to Season 5. Producing and writing numerous episodes. It's not like he was just some no-name writer who pitched a bad script.
I remember seeing his name a lot as a screenwriter. I usually pay attention to that because I'm a writer too, a little bit, or I've been doing some writing in my days, and I love knowing who wrote what I'm watching and stuff, because it's really interesting, and then I can explore more of their work and stuff as well.
The Bubble Boy, that was one that I actually wrote with Larry.
Yeah,
that was hysterical.
Very inspired, kind of lots of different elements to it.
Where they drove
outside
to that
of
cabin
the
or something.
Usual sets that we used.
In fact, the bet wasn't the only Larry Charles episode rejected. There's another episode, The Salad, not to be confused with The Big Salad.
But you had to have that.
Yeah, right.
Which involved George Costanza.
Yeah, I heard Larry David said he wrote it because some secretary or something was asked to buy the big salad, and then they made a big deal about it and stuff.
Noticing that he's never seen a black person eat a salad.
Jeez. Never seen a black person eat a salad? I guess I haven't either. That's a good point, I guess. Like, but I don't really think about it. I don't see a lot of people eat salads. Why would you eat salad when you can eat something good? Jeez. Or some, yeah, some salads are good, I guess. Caesar salad, I guess, is okay. And if they have like chicken and stuff in it, but usually salad is just kind of meh.
Comes from Derek Bjorklund's 2013 book Seinfeld References. The black friend would be played by Jerry Seinfeld's real-life comic friend Mario Joyner. Unlike the rewrites they attempted to fix the bet, they didn't even bother trying to fix this one. NBC just wasn't comfortable with Seinfeld touching on race. And considering the backlash they got years later from the Puerto Rican Day Parade episode, they're probably right.
Damn.
But if Larry had rewritten this script, he would have had more of a build-up to why George blurted out the salad observation. But even though he had written two of the show's most controversial scripts, he wasn't forced off the show. If he wanted to, he could have stayed for the entire run. Larry's a different kind of guy, though, as he describes that he's a lot like Kramer. He's burnt out with the censors and sitcom limitations. And feeling like he just had no more stories to tell, he left after season 5.
When I left Seinfeld, everybody, agents and networks, and probably the audience too to some degree, wanted me to do another Seinfeld, and that was the absolutely last thing I would ever do.
And then after this, you know what he goes on to make? A pilot with Wayne Knight. And he would cast the show using his Seinfeld connections on to make
Why does this
a pilot
this kitchen looks like the kitchen from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, dude?
With Wayne Knight. And he would cast the show using his Seinfeld connections. He had Crazy Joe Davola, aka Peter Crombie, who apparently
his episode was so good with the clown and stuff and the opera.
Passed away a few months ago. The wife was played by the woman who was Elaine's roommate, and Jerry Seinfeld did the warm-up for the live crowd as a favor. And for years, the script for the bet was a classic case of lost media. If you wanted to know what was in that script, you had to have either worked on the show or just be in the know. But in 2022, a Buffalo charity auction would sell a signed copy from the personal archive of Jason Alexander.
Damn.
This was the final script version dated December 11th of 1990. This version has not found its way online. People tried contacting Larry Charles to see if he had it, to which he'd reply, "If it's out there, good luck finding it." By late 2000, to see if he had it, to which he'd reply, "If it's
I believe it's online somewhere. Good luck. On what line?
It's out there. Good luck finding it." By late 2023, eBay had started seeing listings for a new script of the bet. This one would be the first draft on September 28th of 1990. Matching up the lines from the screenshots of Jason's script to the PDF of the leaked script, the beats are similar, but the lines are different. The final version has more of a traditional Seinfeld feel, but then it also has lines like "Creamster of Love." These first draft scripts were being sold for $4,000, and then photocopied and relisted for $2,500. Someone was getting rich from photocopying these scripts.
Damn.
This is unbelievable. I told you.
Which almost feels like something Kramer would do on the show.
True?
But eventually, one Reddit user will put an end to all this. In March of 2024, the script went public and was placed on archive.org. HBO GOT would post on April 2nd of 2024 to Reddit why he did this. It was a gag purchase, and this was actually his burner account. He was using this account because of how lame he felt spending $800 on this was. But now, because of him, after 33 years, nothing is finally something. Anyway, that's all for now. I want to give a shout out to Joe Petty of VKM TV Studios, who told me about this story and worked on the video with me. If you're looking for more pop culture talk, go check him out. He recently did a deep dive on the 90s sitcom star Sasha Mitchell, whose career self-destructed. And if you like this video,
maybe I will
turn
check
on
him
notifications and check out my video about the 8-ball jacket guy. And once again, be sure to check out my sponsor, Trainwell.
It's okay, dude. It was a good video, though. I'm gonna like it. Yeah, dude. I guess pretty interesting to hear about a lost Seinfeld episode. Pretty interesting it being about a gun. The joke about Kennedy or whatever ring them was kind of raunchy, I guess. But it wasn't that bad. But I see how maybe TV networks and stuff didn't want to air that. But anyways, what did you guys think? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe as well. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.